Hello and welcome to this episode of GluTalk with me, Billy Haining, co-founder of Glue, where we're going to be talking today about the impacts and risks of shadow IT. And I'm pleased to say joining me is Adam Chamberlain, who's he's the managing director and founder of Follow. Adam, glad to have you here today. Pleasure to finally sit down and have this session with you.
Thank you for having me, Billy. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And before we kick off and set the scene around shadow IT and give some stats to the people listening and viewing, could you tell us a bit about your background, Adam, and who Follow are and what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So I started in the IT industry kind of early 2000s, kind of doing IT support and worked my way through the ranks and wound up as an IT manager. So I did that for about half my career, probably about 12, 13 years. And then I moved into to doing technical pre-sales and technical consultancy. I then moved into some commercial sales roles, and actually kind of was kind of taking customers on different cloud journeys and optimizing their spend. Worked for a startup, done a few little bits, and yeah, kind of eventually set up my own business. To I suppose really the initial goal was to help customers get the most out of cloud at a high level.
What was it that drove you in particular about that? Why did you feel so passionate about that, Adam?
Because I'd seen so many businesses all struggling with the same things, the same concepts, and just felt like I'd kind of picked up a load of experience and wanted to go and help others to kind of make the most of it. It's it's a kind of great area, great technology, but it needs some consideration.
Okay, so I'm going to set the scene in terms of three statistics around shadow IT, and I'd like to get your view on the statistics that I share to see whether you agree or whether you or otherwise. So Gartner found that shadow IT is between 30 and 40% of IT spend in enterprise organizations, and people like Everest Group predict that it accounts for about 50% of IT spend. So that's the first stat. The second one is that a third of successful cyber attacks will come from shadow IT. So again, our friends at Gartner estimated in 2020 that one third of all successful cyber attacks will be on data stored in shadow IT infrastructure. And lastly, in the SaaS Visibility and Impact report in 2022, they stated that 69% of IT executives feel that shadow IT is a major concern for SaaS and cloud adoption. So three of around about 145 we could have shared. But would you agree with that in terms of what you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the numbers and the scale of it are kind of bang on. I think it is kind of it's fairly obvious to say that the most likely thing that will leave you exposed to a cyber risk is something that you don't know about, because of course it can't be subject to your normal controls. It's a growing area. It's been accelerated by the pandemic, but it's just it's just a massive growth area, and one worth considering.
So obviously you're an expert when it comes to this stuff. I'm certainly not. So what I'd like to do, and as this is my first hosting of GluTalk, I'd actually like to start with the basics. So for anyone listening or watching the podcast, could you just define what shadow IT is and what it actually is? If I know nothing, as though I know nothing about it, what actually is it?
Yeah, sure. I suppose shadow IT sounds quite sinister, but ultimately it is an IT resource that is not known to the relevant parties, and those might be the parties that govern use, make sure it's secure, or make sure it's budgeted for. Really, it just sits with outside one or all of those fields, so it's not kind of accounted for properly in kind of sort of any way, really.
And it does sound nefarious, as you said, but is it always a bad thing, Adam? Is shadow IT always a bad thing?
Well, I think it's certainly evolved from Shadow IT used to be a PC or a server under someone's desk doing something. It might have been hosting a web server. It might have been processing end of month financial reports. It could have been doing something, and that was kind of generally done by people that had technical expertise to go and deploy it, and then it was a way for developers to go and get the resources that either IT couldn't or wouldn't provide for them fast enough. And it's now spilled over into a thing that anyone with a PC internet connection and an email address can go and sign up to. And so I suppose if you kind of take the two ends of that spectrum, is it terrible? Well, you could say yes, it is, because it's going to be costing you money potentially. It's going to be exposing you to security and governance concerns that you don't know about. But on the flip side, you could say, yeah, but my teams can go and find their own solutions. They don't need to rely and wait for IT. They can find the best thing that works for them, and that's fantastic because it allows for experimentation and innovation, and it's really good. The truth of the matter is, kind of somewhere in the middle sits the where we should land on it, which is it can pose some risks, definitely, but you can't and don't really want to just say no to it because it also presents a load of opportunities.
How important is the policies around shadow IT in terms of, so the example you just gave, were actually, if you want to free a team to go and be creative to get things done quicker, and is it the policies that sit around it that are important?
So that's the interesting thing from in my experience and what we see. People that go and do shadow IT, they don't actually see themselves as breaking a policy. They just see it as getting their job done. They're like, I found this new tool. It does something better, faster, cheaper, more accurately, whatever it is. I want to go and use it, and it's a good thing. And it doesn't, I often refer to it as subconscious IT because they almost don't think about it in terms of breaching a policy. So I don't think policy is overly effective. Either a kind of a technical policy that says block, stop, no, or a written policy that says this is how you should use your IT equipment. It just doesn't work. And the point on that is there is billions of dollars being plowed into making as a service IT, software as a service, all of those things as easy and as accessible to as many people as is possible, because that's how they work. Just make it available to everyone, make the onboarding process as slick and as frictionless as possible, get users on the platform, and then get them to pay for something on the platform.
So I know you're biased, but how serious do you think customers should take shadow IT?
I don't think that you can not take it seriously, because it's now starting to spill into different areas of a business where having multi-factor authentication across your business applications, for example, is a prerequisite for going and getting cyber insurance. Well, if you've got half a dozen apps that are being used by different departments in isolation, you're not aware of them, all of a sudden your cyber insurance policy is null and void because you are not using multi-factor. So on the surface it seems sort of quite innocent and not a big issue, but when you start digging into it and you look at the financial element, the security element, and the governance element, it's kind of almost can businesses afford not to do it when you look at the implications?
And I guess from your experience as well, what type of organisations should be fearful of shadow IT? Because obviously we're operating in the channel. We deal with SMBs all the way through to corporates and central government accounts. So in your opinion, which organisations are most affected, or what type of organisations are affected?
I don't. I don't necessarily think there's a type or an industry that we've seen as more effective. Generally, when you start creeping towards the 40, 50 user mark, and by users I mean PC users. If you have a manufacturing business and you've got 5 PCs to kind of manage the back office, it's your 50-person business is less susceptible to it because people probably aren't signing up to things whilst working in production, for example. But yeah, about that 40, 50 user mark, businesses start to lose control and sight of what is being done, and it just starts to sprawl out. And it can be as simple as you've got a corporate Zoom account, but your new starters don't realize it, and they're just using a free one and timing out meetings every 45 minutes and frustrating people. Or it could be you're actually maybe doubling up on spend because someone's buying something on a credit card and expensing it that you've already got. But yeah, about 40, 50 users, all the way up, up to, I mean, I don't want to put a cap on it because it's ultimately a challenge that affects everyone. And the only other point I would add to that is, remote first, hybrid working is much more of a thing now. And I think when people are at home working, they're just a little bit more inclined to treat technology as they would on their mobile device and say, hey, I want that app. I like the look of that app. Let's download it, give it a try. Don't like it, we'll go and get another one. So they almost like that's why I call it sort of subconscious IT, because they almost go through this sort of selection process without even thinking about it. And all of a sudden they've signed up to 3 or 4 things. They might continue to use the one they like the most. The others probably don't get shut down. So yeah, 50 users upwards, remote hybrid working compounds the problem.
And obviously, there's been a boom of hybrid working and remote working as a result of the pandemic. You mentioned it earlier before. Have we seen a rise in subconscious IT as a result of the pandemic? And again, from the work you've been doing, how significant has it been? And obviously, we're all starting to go back into the office. What impact is that now having on people's mindsets and carrying that behaviour on?
Yeah. So look, you hear about the pandemic driving all sorts of kind of changes in technology, and it kind of, it's so easy to sort of roll your eyes at it. But I mean, ultimately, as a service technology, it was so quick, and it was the downloadable, the toggle switch on that businesses needed when they had to make that rapid adaptation in how they work. So it did drive it. It was on the up anyway. People, when I was, in previous roles working with businesses, they all wanted to be consuming technology as a service, and switching stuff on when they needed it and switching stuff off when they didn't, and scaling up and scaling down, doing all those wonderful things. So everyone wanted to be doing it, but I suppose the pandemic offered a moment where they all had to go, oh yeah, we need that video conferencing solution. Oh, we need that solution to do that. There was all sorts of examples. And I mean, the challenge with it, as I mentioned, things don't really get switched off. They just get left there. But it's still happening now. Workers are back in offices, and it's just that, like, technology has just become so integrated in our lives. That's why I say it's subconscious, because you end up doing stuff just that goes and solves your problem without even thinking about it. And that's quite amazing, because that, 10 years ago, that was the sort of the elite of the IT professionals, where they had the handle on technology and they were manipulating it as they needed to. Whereas now anyone can do it. They can just go like that thing, Google search, like that, do that, sign up, I'm in, try it out, and they don't have to think.
So before we come on to who Nafolo are and how you help tackle this issue, something occurred to me before when you were talking. Wouldn't a lot of this be covered off? I guess it's a loaded question, because I know a bit of the answer because the experience that I have. Wouldn't generally a customer's asset management and audit management capability and process help pick up some of this stuff on a regular basis?
The depending on what you've got, but the challenge with all of this stuff is, it doesn't have a thing that gets installed anymore. You don't click application.exe and off you go and install something. Like, things are accessed through a web browser, and so nothing is getting installed. And people are working in different ways. They might be working on their home laptop and going, oh, I quite like the idea of that, I'll just sign up to that, and I'll just sign up using my work address, and I'll activate that tomorrow. So it starts to fall into a load of cracks that are really just presented by the change in working practices. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that traditional software asset management isn't a good thing. It absolutely is. All of this stuff is still good, but shadow IT and software as a service, it just presented this massive kind of undercurrent of things that it was quite hard to detect, given the size of the problem that sat behind it.
And I guess from what you've said, obviously there'll be generic themes in terms of what the threats are for customers, in relation to shadow IT, but it will be specific to each customer. So specific threats will result in specific issues or specific problems across the board for customers who are suffering from it. So again, I guess it's just not an out of the box thing, and understanding the data and understanding the challenges that specific customers have is going to be key in terms of what the opportunities are out the back of it.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the risk in 3 areas generally, and it's a compliance risk, which is, you're storing, you're processing data. You've maybe got customer data in places that you don't know about, you're not expecting. So you run the risk of bumping into compliance issues, and obviously compliance issues can be affected by the industry that you're in. If you're highly governed industry, then that's potentially going to be more of a problem in certain areas. The other area is security. We've discussed it. It goes without saying that the most likely door to get broken into is the one that you don't know about and you haven't locked, bolted, alarmed, done all the things you would normally do. The interesting point around the shadow usage is on these free tiers, the tiers that the SaaS vendors get you to sign up to, they almost never offer single sign-on or multi-factor authentication. That the next step, the paid for service, so you can start to bring those features in. Not always, but typically. And so that means that you've got unique passwords being used out there. Passwords may be being shared around a department. It's just not subject to your normal controls. So it brings that security risk in, and then lastly, you've got the financial element of it, the financial risk, and this affects everyone. That if you're not governing and controlling your spend, you are much more likely to waste it, getting yourself locked into contracts that you don't want to be in, doubling up on functionality that isn't needed. We've seen businesses buying the same software in 2 different geographies, and they've got a license for it they've already purchased and could use anyway. So it's a real problem. And then lastly, on that financial piece, the reputational damage that can come from a security or a compliance breach is significant. No one wants to have a headline that they've leaked data through any means. And then lastly, regulatory fines. If you are in one of those highly regulated industries and you're storing data where it shouldn't be, then you run the risk of being fined for it.
So if I'm a channel partner looking to assist my customers in tackling this issue, we'll talk again in a second about Nfollow. But from a channel partner perspective, should I take this challenge seriously, and will my customers listen to what I've got to say?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the rise in that as a service consumption, like everyone is doing it. You're kind of more your older traditional vendors that everyone wants to move to that as a service model, and customers are out there and they are buying things as a service direct. They don't necessarily want to. They might not even know they're doing it. They would like to have that channel partner that could aggregate that spend for them, help them provide a bit of governance around it. So yeah, it's a growing challenge. There are all sorts of mechanisms where a channel partner can use it to their advantage. For instance, go and find all of the things that are being purchased in a customer, help them kind of ratify that and condense it down, remove any wastage, which maybe frees up budget to go and spend on other more exciting and pressing projects. But also, you could potentially funnel some of that spend either through a marketplace that you're providing in one of the clouds, or even offer to roll it into a potential ELA that you actually have with the customer anyway. So yeah, all sorts of different opportunities.
So for me, and we'll come on to it more, is there's a co-termination consolidation, there's refresh opportunities, it's obviously driving a database conversation. So I think it's a great point within our chat really to talk about. Obviously you're very passionate about the subject, Adam, which obviously made you do something about it. But give us an overview of Nfollow, the platform, and what you guys do to tackle this issue.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose it started because it felt like I knew that there was a problem there, but I also knew it was a problem that was quite hard to see. Even though it was big, it was easy to turn a blind eye to, and it wasn't a massive issue. And wanted to create something that could kind of go toe to toe with software as a service or as a service tech, because those things were really easy to start using. They were super fast to implement. They were often free or really cost effective, and actually some of those more traditional solutions just weren't any of those things. So we looked at the things you had to have to go and sign up to a tool, worked our way through them, and stumbled upon email. You couldn't sign up to a tool without an email address, and there was this wealth of information that was contained within a business's email environment that could uncover a whole lot of information about what was gaining interest, what was being used, where were invoices going, and so we went and built a solution that made it as quick and easy to go and open that up as is possible, and that was really it. We knew that there was a problem that existed, but it was actually how do you help a customer understand that problem as quickly and easily as they can, to then go and do something about, whether that be, consolidate, get rid of wastage, channel things through a single point, whatever it might be. It just felt like, how do we lift the lid on this first of all?
And do you have any specific use cases? Obviously, we can talk about. We obviously within Glue, we ran some software, and we found some licenses specifically around Dropbox. We don't standardize on Dropbox as a business. We found a number of Dropbox licenses, which is kind of enlightening for us, because we were paying for something that we hadn't signed off, but clearly the people within the business had a need for it. So we now have an approval process. We changed our policy slightly to allow people to use it. But do you have any other use cases that you could give us as part of this?
There's a whole bunch, and it extends. So the way we track interest, we can start to show, if a particular tool or a particular category is starting to generate noise. The very first, how do you first start seeing this? You start to see, well, people start signing up to newsletters, they start attending demos and conferences, so you start to see that noise build in both tools and areas. So we can pretty much track that noise, and as that noise becomes actual sign-ups and activations, and then gradually those sign-ups and activations will start to become invoices. So there's a whole piece of work that just is like, just lift the lid and see what is going on. Then there's an exercise to go through and sort of say, well, exactly as you did, we didn't realize we were using that. So sometimes it's, so we didn't realize we were using that and we just shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole use case around that. Sometimes it's why are we using those three things? Like they all do the same thing, and so like let's go and consolidate it down. And then lastly, it's kind of it's around the financial element of it, which is why have I got invoices going to these specific places? They're not, why are they not going to the to accounts receivable or whoever the right place is? So and kind of once you've got that information, there's a whole lot of things you can dig into. We actually track when someone leaves a business, and you end up with these orphaned SaaS activations, and quite often if there's a I kind of don't want to sort of name drop vendors, but you can sometimes find a couple of £100 a month just in things that can be closed down for one user. That's £200 every single month. We found 10 of them. That's £2,000 a month of just wasted spend. And there might be processes in place to catch it, but it just provides a really nice kind of at the source view of what's going on.
Yeah, I saw you guys posted, and made me chuckle. I saw you guys posted on LinkedIn a few weeks ago around an assessment you guys had carried out, and Gymshark had jumped up to be the second most. And it's kind of like, obviously everyone's trying to lose weight, I guess, or during dry January post Christmas. So it made me chuckle. But I suppose when you think about it, there would be an increase in gym subscriptions post Christmas.
Fascinating to see the way. And that's where it does almost feel like subconscious, like how like human activity sort of starts to bleed into what's happening with technology. It's it made me smile when I pulled it up.
And I know we're going to cover off. You've kindly given us an offer for people listening to this podcast, which we'll come to at the end. But could you talk us through the assessment process and typically what an engagement looks like from the follow?
So our USP really is quite how quick and easy it is to go and set up and integrate. It is a minute or two. We create a simple integration with a customer's email environment, and then depending on what we're doing, whether we're looking to monitor going forward, or whether we want to go and provide a sort of a historical view, we can go and pull back and report on that, or we can start capturing going forward. But it's as simple as that, really. We look at three very simple bits of information within the environment, and that's the from email address. Where's an email coming from, and is it a place that's of interest. Where's it going to? That's that's ultimately your user, and the subject, and we kind of analyze those as a fingerprint, and then and kind of assess and present the behavior in a set of dashboards. So yeah, the sign up is the great piece, because within minutes, quite literally minutes, it can be done in seconds if you just next, your dashboard is building out and starting to show you all of this information. And I think it's that richness of information that we can provide with such a kind of minimum upfront effort.
Because I am a non-technical individual, which people who are watching this who know me will chuckle at. For me, the thing that's impressed me the most, Adam, with what you guys do is the user interface. It's very, very user friendly, very easy to interpret, and I know that you've kindly given us a video demo as part of this podcast. So if everyone at our end's doing their job correctly, some sort of link should pop up now, giving whoever's watching or listening to this link to watch the video demo. And of course, if anyone's got any questions around that, they can contact the Glue team for any follow-up. But also we mentioned about this assessment. So again, you've very kindly offered something to the Glue listeners and viewers. So if you'd like to take us through that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So it's ultimately an offer where we provide a complimentary assessment of your SaaS usage, and we go and perform an audit and present those findings back to you, take you through them, what they mean, and kind of help provide some insights into kind of some areas to focus on, and where you're potentially exposing yourself to risk, losing money, and it's that really. It's a complimentary assessment to your SaaS/shadow IT/subconscious IT usage and the behaviors in your business.
Adam, we really appreciate that offer. And if anyone listening or watching would like to take us up on that offer, please contact us at hello@glue-group.com. That's hello@glue-group.com. And we'd be happy to plug you into Adam or to discuss that further with you. So, Adam, that brings us to the end of this podcast. It wasn't as painful as I thought, so thank you for being so pleasant. It's been fascinating to learn more about Shadow IT from my perspective and to get your opinion on it. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we'll see everyone on the next episode of GluTalk. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Billy.
See you guys.